Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be making this cake. I hope you like it. It's like a suitcase of money cake, yeah, like a closed suitcase with money on top and everything, with dollars all over and stuff. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah, today I'm going to be using vanilla chocolate marble cake that I already made, and then we're going to be cutting it into two. I made it like in a sheet pan, so we're going to be slicing it into two because this way to be too wide. So this way, if you slice it into two and like stack it on top of one another, it's going to give us the height of the suitcase we want. Yeah, so bear that in mind if you're going to be making this cake. So try to like trace the half, like the midline as possible, as much as possible, and then try to trim the edges as much as you can, because those sloppy edges will just make your cake look funny. So try to trim that off, and those are the parts you get to eat. That's why you can seem to lose weight. I'm not talking to myself, I'm just talking in general. Okay guys, okay, I'm kind of unserious today. Okay, so what you want to do is to trim out the edges, yeah, because those edges will make your cake look raggedy, and you want it to look really nice, and like you want the edges to be crisp and like, you know, sharp edges and everything. So just cut out the extra nonsense. Okay, so once you are done doing that, we are going to take this cake. Notice I put some parchment paper underneath when I flipped it over. That's so that it doesn't stick, because if it sticks, that will stress you out. Okay, so I'm going to take some buttercream and put in my bowl. So I make my buttercream in batches because like it's just marrying buttercream, and if you want the recipe for that, it's going to be right up here. It says click on me. So this is the ganache I'm going to be using. I'm going to be covering it in ganache today. And if you also want the recipe for my white chocolate ganache for sharp edges, yeah, click on this right up here. It says click on me. Yeah, click on that again. Okay, so what you want to do right now is I'm not going to be putting it straight on the cake board. I'm going to put it on a mini board before putting it on the cake board. And the reason is because I'm going to be flipping this cake a lot. So when I flip it, I don't want the cake to be falling off or maybe to start getting spoiled or anything. So this cake, we're going to be flipping a lot. So when you buy the cake board for this cake, I'm using the cake board 35 by 45. That's the size of the cake board. But the mini board underneath it is it's 20, it's 20 by 16. Yes, so you want to put a mini board underneath it, or you can cut that out of cardboard if you don't want to buy that, or you can just buy a regular one if you can afford it. So you want to put that because you're going to be flipping it a lot, and you want to glue it with some white chocolate onto your cake board so it won't be moving. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is to transfer your cake on top of the mini cake board that is on top of the big cake board. Does that make sense? And then we are going to layer with some buttercream. Okay, like I told you initially, if you want the recipe to this awesome, wonderful, perfect tasting buttercream, it's going to be right up here or in the description box below, so you can check that out. So we're going to be putting the second one on top, and see how easy it was to lit and it didn't stress me out. That's because I put some parchment paper first before putting it on that cake board, because like cakes that are very moist tend to stick. See how soft it is? Just by touching it, you can see it bend. So make sure you like bear that in mind when you're like maybe flipping your cake and all of that. So the next thing you want to do is trim. Yeah, now I already trimmed it initially, but once you stack it, just in case you didn't stack it well enough, you want to make sure you trim off the excess and the edges. You want to make sure like it is very upright. Every side is like, you know, symmetrical. Yeah, that's the word. So that's what you want to do, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. So you're going to clean up your cake board, and then we're going to cover in chocolate ganache. Okay, so if you want I have a video on how to cover your cake in chocolate ganache and get sharp edges for square cakes. Although this is not a square cake, it is a rectangular cake, but it is still the same technique. So like how many times I put chocolate ganache around it, like how many times I go around with chocolate ganache, and what I do basically for you to get the perfect sharp edges, because the base of your cake determines what the outside looks like. So I'm going to put the link right up here for you to see. Yeah, it's for square cakes, but I use the same technique for my rectangular cakes, for basically cakes that have like you know, edges like this basically. Okay, so once I'm done with that, yeah, I'm already done covering it, and this took like maybe 30 minutes or 25 minutes to do. So you should check out that video so you can know how to do it perfectly, so you can have the perfect base for your cake. Okay, so once we are done, I'm going to cut off the excess on top with a sharp knife. Yeah, so the reason is because like if you don't use a spatula to like swipe it in, it will give it like a sharp edge if you use a sharp knife that has been dipped in hot water. So basically just watch that video. You're going to see everything I did in this video, because I already fast forwarded it like too much, so it won't like make this video like extremely long and boring. So I already colored my fondant in gray, and I didn't want it to be too dark. So whatever color you want to make your box in, that's what you're going to be covering you're going to color this fondant. So you want to make sure your fondant is well kneaded and pliable, and then you want to divide it into 3 parts. So take 1/3 of it and then roll it out. This part is what we're going to use to cover the top of the cake, because we're going to be paneling this cake. This is a paneling method. If you don't know what paneling is in fondants, like covering and cake decoration and everything, I have a video on how to cover cakes in fondant, and I showed you 2 different methods. They're the overhead method and the paneling method. So for this kind of cakes, I like to use the paneling method. So if you want to really know how to do that in depth and well explained, you should check out the video, and I'm going to put the link right up here. It says click on me. Yeah, click on that. So guys, every tool I'm going to use in this video is going to be in the description box below, and I'm going to put the link for you to buy it in case you want to make the cake. So what I'm going to do right now is to lift it and then just make sure your cake is wet. So you want to put some glue or some water on top of your cake, otherwise your fondant won't stick. Yeah, so make sure your cake is wet first, and then try to smoothen as much as you can, and then try to cut out the excess. Okay, so once you're done doing that, yeah, you want to make sure you do that really nicely and neatly, and you cut out the excess that is hanging over, and then we're going to put more fondant around the cake. And like I told you, I'm using paneling method. So I already rolled out the fondant and like rolled it around my rolling pin. So if you want to see how I did that, check out, I'm going to I already put the video, but if you didn't see that, I already put a card for you guys to click on. So if you didn't see that, the description box is going to be in the comment section below. In the link to the video for knowing how to panel like this and neatly is going to be in the description box below. So, and the title is how to panel square cakes. I know this is not square, this is rectangle. I've said it before. Okay, let me stop repeating myself. Okay, so you want to cut out the excess, yeah, and then we're going to put more fondant around the cake, because the fondant we did initially, like we rolled out, didn't completely cover the cake, so we didn't cover the other side of the cake. So I'm going to roll another one out and then try to cover the other side. But before you do that, make sure you smoothen the one you already rolled out, because you know fondant dries up really fast, so that like it doesn't dry up on you and everything. So take your smoothen as much as possible before you try to place the other like half of the cake. So now I'm going to be rolling the fondant on the rolling pin like I did initially, and then just try to cover the other half of the cake and then cut out the excess. So for this, you're going to be needing a scissors to cut out the excess, and then you're also going to be needing a razor, those razors that have handles. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know it, but I'm going to show it in this video, and I'm going to put the link for you to buy it in the comment section below. And it has like disposable razor blades, so like when this one is blunt, this is the razor I'm talking about, that's what you're going to use to cut out the edge. So it's going to give you that perfect sharp edges without you having to over smoothen or work too hard. So I'm going to put the link right up here. I'm going to put the link in the description box below for you guys to buy it. And then what it does is that it's very sharp, and you can buy it in bookshops if you want. Like I think they sell them in bookshops. I bought mine from a bookshop, and it has like disposable razor blades. So like when that one is blunt, you can change it. Okay, so I rolled out a strip of fondant, yeah, to try to like demarcate the top of the suitcase from the bottom, if that makes sense. So we're going to put that all around. Sorry, you can see my hair. I didn't really film this part well. So you're going to put that all around the cake, on the bottom base of the cake, and then flip it over again. So let me repeat myself. You're going to flip the cake over on top of a cake board, and then you're going to put a strip of fondant that you already cut out evenly around the bottom side, and then you're going to flip over. So that creates the top of the suitcase for you, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you guys notice, I already covered the cake board, so you want to make sure you cover the cake board at this point, because now you're going to be putting all the accessories of the suitcase. Okay, so what we want to do right now is to put like the belt on top of the suitcase, and we're going to be doing it in white. I kind of regretted doing this in white. I should have done it in black, because black will make the cake more like, it will be like a good color contrast and make it like, it will make it pop more, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so right now what I'm doing is covering the cake, the box, the board, and fondant, and I'm going to put in like I'm using my embosser to put some paint on it, so it won't be just plain white covering and everything. So I use that embosser you see on top of the mat to emboss like the bottom, like the cake board that I covered in fondant. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing right now, you want to make sure you cover your cake in your board in fondant before you do this, is to cut out some rounds, and then I'm going to try to create like those details that you see on suitcases. Okay, so I'm going to place it on the edges, but what I noticed was this was a little bit too thin. Yeah, the fondant I cut out was a little bit too thin, so I'm going to remold it and cut out a bigger part. I want it to be thick so it can like show. Yeah, so you can show a little bit more. If it's too thin, it's not going to show as much as you want, because if you see a normal suitcase, that place is kind of bulging out. It shows that there is something on top of it, so you want to make it a little bit thicker. Don't be like me. So I'm going to cut it out again and then make it thicker, and then I'm going to place it, and I'm going to place 4 rounds around at the 4 corners of the suitcase, and I'm going to wet the fondant first so it can stick. So this is what I'm doing. Yeah, notice what I'm doing. And once you've applied it with your fingers like this, you don't want to keep like stretching with your fingers. You want to take your cake smoother and then try to like use it to smoothen as much as possible. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Yeah, and then see this thing you just did right here, you're going to do at the all 4 corners of the cake. Yes, so that's what you're going to do, and that's what I did. So this is the last one, and you want to do the same thing. Okay, so once you are done with that, the next thing you want to do is do for the bottom part. But for the bottom part, you're going to be using half circles, because you know, like you can't put underneath the cake, so it's going to be just around at the 4 corners of the cake. So you're going to be using semicircles, and then you're going to be using your cake smoother to apply it and make it stay as much as possible. Yeah, so notice what I did. So what I did there, you're going to do at all 4 sides of the cake, and then once you're done, we're going to put the belt on top of the cake. And for this belt, I used white. Like I said initially, like I kind of regretted using white for the edges of the cake and the belt. If I use black, I feel like it will be a little bit sharper to give it a contrast. So you want to wet the point where you're going to put your suitcase belt. Yeah, so yeah, like the fondant can stick. And make sure when you're doing this, you smoothing with your smoother, and try to make sure it is well positioned and doesn't have like raggedy edges and everything, because that's what makes your cake neat, and you want it to be really neat and pretty. Okay, so once you apply the first one, you want to apply the second one just like you applied the first one. Yeah, and then I hope you guys can see that there are extra by the sides, but don't worry about that. Make sure they're extras, that way you can cut it off with scissors, and that way you can have control over what you cut, and so like it can be symmetrical. Both sides can be the same thing, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to neaten up my fondant here as much as possible, and then I'm going to cut out the extra in front of it with a scissors. Okay, so once you've done that, the next thing you want to do after doing that is to, okay, what's the next thing I want to do? I can't remember. Oh, the next thing you want to do is to do like the details on top of the cake. So on top of the belt, there are some, I don't know what they are, I don't know the name, but they are these strips of leather. I don't know. So we're going to be putting 3 of those on each side, like symmetrically, and then we're going to be cutting rounds, yeah, and use it as like the buckle of the belt in front of the suitcase. Yeah, so that's what we did. So once you're done with that, what you want to do is take a tiny piping tip, like a piping tip that has a tiny mouth, and then use it to emboss on top of those things by the edges. Just like normally if you look at normal suitcases, there are screws, so that's what you want to use to like form the screw, like the imprint of the screw, if that makes sense. And you're going to do that across round the cake. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I don't know, I hope you guys can see what I'm doing and I'm not just blabbing. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to clean up your cake. If you have a steamer, that's the best thing. If you make fondant cakes a lot, you should buy a steamer. What it does is that it cleans the excess cornstarch off of your cake and it makes it glossy and really nice. So you want to steam your cake, the top, the bottom, and take off the excess and make sure it is very neat. And then we are going to like highlight the parts of the cake we need to highlight with some gold dust. Okay, so I'm going to be using this gold dust I buy from my vendor, but I'm going to put another link for you guys in the description box below, where you can buy this really awesome popular gold dust. Most people buy that. It's very pigmented and stuff. It's going to be in the description box below, so you can click on that and buy all of the things you need for this cake. And then if you buy anything from those links, I get a commission, just so you guys know. So please buy and keep buying and never stop buying. Okay, so once you steam your cake and you're sure your cake is completely neat, and then we are going to, if you don't have a steamer, just take a brush, take a sponge, a neat sponge, not the one you use to wash plate, just like a neat one that you've never used before, and wet it and try to take off all of the excess cornstarch on your cake. So that works a lot too. Okay, so we're going to paint the parts of the cake that are like sticking out, and I kind of painted this in two parts, because like I'm going to put the first coat and then put the second coat once I'm done with that, so that way every part is covered. If you don't want this to be as stressful as this was for me, don't use, when you want to, the parts you're going to be covering in gold, make them in yellow. That way, like once you color once, like every part is covered without you having to go the second time. The reason why I had to go separately was because I made it in white, and like white kind of shows through a lot. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is placing my edible dollars that I already printed. I printed this in sugar paper, and I'm going to be placing it on top of the cake randomly, so it can look like the suitcase is for a millionaire, and it is so full that they had to keep some money on top of it. So cool. So if you'd like to buy these dollars as well, I'm going to put the link in the description box below. And that's all she wrote, guys. That's all you have to do. I know it looks like a lot, but it's quite easy. So thank you guys, and please give me a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.